Thunderbolt 5 SSD enclosures are here, and in this video we're going to take a look at the ACASIS TB501 Pro NVMe SSD enclosure. We're going to talk the speeds to expect, the features that this has, who I think this is for, and who should maybe go for a different drive instead. I do want to say ACASIS sent me this enclosure for free for purposes of making this video. They have no input into this content, and this is going to be based on my experience using this with a couple of different Mac computers. As soon as I set this up, I plugged it into my M4 Max Studio, and I was getting speeds of about 6,200 megabytes a second on the write side and 5,500 megabytes a second on the read, which is insanely fast. The fastest speeds I've clocked to date on a Mac before this drive were about 3,200 megabytes a second on the read and the write using USB 4 and Thunderbolt 4 enclosures. So this is a whole nother speed class of enclosure now. Also, if you're interested in buying this enclosure or any of my recommended NVMe's, I do have links to buy in the description below. What's great about an enclosure like the TB501 is you have a single USB-C connection, and then to install your drive, all you have to do is remove the cover, put the drive in at an angle, and I like to put the rubber stopper on the NVMe, and then you just press it down and it locks into place. If you want to use a smaller drive than the standard 2280 size, they also include an insert in the box. So I tried this out with my Crucial 2230 size SSD, and that worked great as well. That one's not quite as fast as this 990 Pro. The thing you need to know about the TB501 is the speeds that you are going to get are going to depend on the NVMe and the machine that you use. So using the 990 Pro and my M4 Max Studio, I was getting top speeds hitting over 6,200 megabytes a second on that write side and 5,500 megabytes a second on the read side. If I plug this into my CalDigit Thunderbolt 5 dock, the speeds dropped just a little bit because I was using another device in the chain. Whenever I tested this with my M1 Max MacBook Pro using Thunderbolt 4 connectors, I started to get speeds of about 3,200 megabytes a second on the read and the write. So this is fully backwards compatible with USB 3, 4, Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt 4. This will work with pretty much anything. You can use a Thunderbolt 5 cable, and this will be backwards compatible as well. I used it with my M1 Max MacBook Pro. But if you want to use this with an iPhone or with an iPad that doesn't support Thunderbolt, then you should probably use this with a 1 terabyte SSD because ACASIS says those draw less power. So in the box, you do get the enclosure, a couple of those thermal pads. You get this nice Thunderbolt 5 cable, which I feel like this is a great length to have with the SSD, whether you're using it with a Mac Studio, a Mac Mini, or MacBook Pro. I've been using this to edit some projects on my Mac Studio, and it's been working great. I've been editing 6K clips on it, no problems, no slowdowns, and I didn't notice any difference using this or the built-in SSD on the Mac Studio. The TB501 does have a couple other things that we need to talk about. The first thing is there's actually a fan built into this, and I never noticed the volume of the fan unless I put my ear right up close to it, and then you can kind of hear it. But there's also a switch on the side that's going to turn the fan off. So if you need to have the quietest workflow possible, you can always shut that fan off if you want to. Another thing to note about the fan is it also has vents on the side and the fan on the top. So you need to make sure when you use this, you have it facing up. That way you can get the best possible airflow out of it. This does run pretty hot, and I noticed that if you run it for a while, the drive will get quite warm to the touch, but the fan does a good job at keeping it from overheating. I did move a terabyte of data onto this enclosure in about 10 minutes, which is kind of interesting because whenever you do the speed test, it looks like it should only take about 4 or 5 minutes. So I did notice that as this drive continued to move files all the way up to the terabyte, it did start to slow down a little bit. So if you're doing very large file transfers, you may notice this starting to slow down. But as soon as this was done transferring, I ran another disk speed test and it was back up to the 6,000 megabytes a second. The TB501 Pro does come in at $289, which is very pricey for an external SSD enclosure. But when you compare it to other pre-built options on the market or just the lack of Thunderbolt 5 enclosures right now, that's not a bad price. You can get a 2 to 4 terabyte NVMe that's pretty good quality for somewhere between $150 and $250 in the 2 to 4 terabyte size range. I really recommend using this with something like the Samsung 990 Pro or the WD Black SN850X. Those are going to be two great SSDs to use with this. I do want to say this is an initial review of this enclosure, and if I have any issues come up with this, I will update the description and the pinned comment with any other notes about it. Now, with all those tests behind me, there was only one small issue I ran into with this enclosure, and that is when I tried to use my new Samsung 9100 Pro NVMe. That actually uses the PCI 5x4 standard to achieve its top speeds. So I talked to ACASIS about it, and they said at this time PCI 5x4 SSDs are not supported. So if you have one of those drives or are planning on buying one of those, don't plan on using it with this enclosure anytime soon, and they weren't sure if a firmware update would fix it. I will update the description or a pinned comment on this video if anything changes with updated versions of this, but at this time those drives will not work. So stick with something like the 990 Pro or the WD Black SN850X. Those are both going to be able to give you the top possible speeds with this. I tested this with a variety of my other SSDs. The 990 Pro is just the fastest one I had with this, but it worked fine with my 970 Pro, my WD SN770X, also tested it with the Crucial P3. It worked fine with all of those drives, just not with the 5x4 Samsung 9100 Pro. So who is the ACASIS TB501 Pro for? This is for someone who wants the fastest possible SSD speeds whenever you're moving tons of data around and you don't have time to wait. This is also going to give you tons of bandwidth for editing 8K footage, 4K footage, 6K footage, tons of files going back and forth between your computer and this drive. Or I also have no problem with using Final Cut Pro libraries on this enclosure. The main issue with this is the price is still pretty high at the time of filming this video. It's just hard to recommend something for $289 when you can also get the ACASIS TBU405 for about $80, and this is still going to give you very fast speeds using Thunderbolt 3. This one you can get speeds of about 3,000 megabytes a second on the read and the write, so it's going to be about half the speed of this, but still way faster than any of those other drives like the Samsung T7 or the T9 or the Crucial X10 Pro or X9 Pro. This is going to crush those in terms of performance. So if I had to recommend one, I would probably say most users could still get the Thunderbolt 3 drive, but if you want to have top performance and the built-in fan with it, and just to have the most headroom possible and future-proof capabilities, that's when an enclosure like the ACASIS TB501 Pro is a great option for you. If you got any questions about the TB501 Pro, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear them. Like this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any upcoming content. If you're interested in buying this enclosure or my favorite NVMe's, I do have links to buy in the description below.